We all know the extreme lengths people will go to do the most DPS possible, to get that one incredible parse, or to squeeze out that little bit of extra damage for their class in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. It's called min-maxing, it goes too far sometimes, but it's what we do to play this game. With abilities taking moment-by-moment snapshots of your buffs and procs to increase their effectiveness, it's no wonder that some people are trying out every single item in the entire game to make sure they can get more out of their character. And a lot of these items can be old world items, relics from past expansions that have effects that can still be extremely powerful, and they can even be best in slot in some situations. Take rogues, for example. We've all seen rogues do ridiculous amounts of DPS on certain pulls, and that's because they're using an old world item from original classic Fell Striker that gives them 100% crit on all of their abilities while they're doing AoE. While some classes will take it to even greater extremes, obviously Death Knights with things like metagem weaving, or even applying talents mid-combat whenever fighting bosses to make sure they can cheek out a little bit extra damage. This was actually patched, so that's a good thing. Well, there's one item that's extremely easy and useful for both casters and melee DPS that can give them a nice little competitive advantage when chasing those min-max parses. And first, I'm going to talk about this item, but then I will mention other items like it that can be used to increase your DPS or other ones people might be looking at. Now, in particular for this item, I'm thinking specifically about warlocks and DKs. Now, other classes could get advantages from using this item, but these are the two major ones. Now, the item we're talking about today is a BOE sword from level 70, and this is going to be the Blade of Wizardry. It is actually a cheeky item that can give you 280 extra haste for your snapshot, and that haste proc actually stays on your character when you swap this weapon off. So you can utilize it to snapshot something like Corruption or your Gargoyle if you are a Death Knight. Now you might be thinking this is something sort of similar to what we saw with Singing Crystal Axe, another level 70 BOE item that we were utilizing during the pre-patch and some people are still using today, where you got a haste proc that was 400 and it also was a two-handed weapon. Now there's two real advantages of the Blade of Wizardry that are different from the Singing Crystal Axe. In particular, the first one is that it says chance on hit for the Singing Crystal Axe. This means you have to be hitting the mob with that weapon every chance you get to be able to even proc the ability. And since it's a slow two-handed weapon, it can be a little bit annoying. Whereas if we look at Blade of Wizardry, it's actually your harmful spells have a chance to proc 280 haste. Now it's less haste obviously than Singing Crystal Axe, but it does mean that all of your normal abilities can proc this. Your abilities are spells, so it's very easy to get this set up. And a lot of DKs that are doing parse runs now are actually casting something like Death Coil as they run in to get some procs potentially, and then going in with their normal openers. Now the second reason this is really useful is that this is a one-handed weapon. So you can have it enchanted with something like Black Magic to get a proc of extra haste even, or enchanted with anything else you might want for some extra damage. And then if you're a Death Knight, of course, you can have an offhand weapon equipped with this to get an extra proc, anything like Black Magic or Fallen Crusader. You can switch those around, but getting both these procs is actually obviously huge, and it will just add some extra cheeky damage. Now you can be cheeky and actually swap this weapon off exactly as soon as you get the proc. And this is what I would be hopefully doing if I were you, so that you could try to get one more weapon proc, something like Berserking, included into your ideal perfect snapshot. So you're going for this, it's very RNG, pretty much like anything else with snapshotting right now, and it's not necessarily the most reliable. Oh, and one huge tip, guys, you can proc your weapon abilities as well as proc your actual like enchantments by using Mind Freeze. Absolutely use Mind Freeze. If you're trying to get a snapshot off and you have Black Magic not procking, you should use Mind Freeze. It's gonna probably proc. Anyways, past this item, which you can get for now pretty cheap on the auction house, there are a few other items that are absolutely amazing. One of them in particular, I think, is pretty much BIS this entire phase, and that one is gonna be the Signet of Edward the Odd. Now, I've talked about this in multiple videos beforehand, but it's not really anywhere on most BIS lists if you're looking at phase 1 BIS. This ring procs all the time, it has pretty solid stats actually, and it gives you 125 extra haste whenever it does proc. So you get it in almost every single one of your snapshots. Past that, someone brought up to me the Hand of Edward the Odd. This is a BOE mace that you can put Fallen Crusader on and it will give you a 320 proc for haste. Now, you won't be able to get black magic, and the big downside to this weapon is that the proc rate is pretty terrible, and two, it actually doesn't keep the buff on you when you swap the weapon off. So I would highly suggest not going after this. One thing a lot of people have been theorizing about for snapshotting would be something like the Untamed Blade from level 60, killing the first boss in Blackwing Lair. This gives you 300 actual strength. And if you don't know, Unholy Death Knights have something like a 2.7 modifier of attack power per strength. So it comes out to be about 810 attack power, although I don't know how that adjusts throughout the fight. I think it's just general strength throughout the fight is that way. So it might apply even stronger to your snapshot. Now for the Untamed Blade, I haven't been able to test that out myself, and just keep that in mind. I don't know if the proc stays on if you swap the weapon off. That would be obviously ideal, so you could try to get a black magic rolling as well, and maybe some other weapon procs right after this hits. Now, in looking into this weapon, I was doing some research on all of the other weapons with chance on hit procs, or anything else with a potential haste proc that you could potentially utilize. And from my understanding so far, I don't think it's 100% worth it to go after anything else past what we've looked at already. So that's the cheeky details, guys. This weapon could be used, and it is actually being used by a couple people trying to go for some crazy parses. I was sent the log actually of some parses over in China of people using this for crazy patchworks. So I just wanted to give you guys all of the information. Now, of course, one of the most important thing to parsing is making sure you have a perfect opener. And if you need a guide for that, you can go click one up there in one of the corners or in the description, because I break that down for you as well. You want to look into what your full BIS gear is for next phase. And for DKs, I have those up in the description and down there as well. But if you want any updates moving into phase 2, because I've got a crazy amount of things planned, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys all on the next one. Stay safe out there and have a great New Year's.